Hi there. Today I'm going to be doing my end of year booktube tag. Now, there are a couple different variations of this tag that are floating around on booktube. Last year I did the one by Ariel Bissett, which is the most popular, but the one I'm doing today is by a creator called Destiny Sidwell. And there's a total of 22 questions, and I felt like this one was a little more in depth, give a little bit more of a reading overview of what you have read that year. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. The first question is most disappointing read of the year. I am going to have to say Dull Parts by Penny Zhang. This had all the right ingredients of what I would want, at least in terms of my interest. The title is from a whole song called Dull Parts. Features 90s alt-rock music heavily, a lot of references to Sylvia Plath and sad girl lore and female friendship and dark academia and a sort of murder mystery, and it just didn't cohesively gel together. I thought the writing felt very YA. I think this should have been marketed as YA. The murder mystery aspect just did not work because it didn't really have that aha moment that murder mysteries have, and just the whole thing fell flat for me. I was so disappointed in this. I also even questioned if the writer was a teen in the 90s because I felt like there were some anachronisms in this. Yeah, just felt like it was a rough draft. Number 2, underdog book of the year. Well, if I go by Goodreads ratings, the one of the lowest rated that I thought was a 4-star book was actually I have it right here, The Other Profile by Irene Graziosi. This is an Italian translation, and it was rated 3.1, I think, on Goodreads. Now, most of the negative reviews were Italian reviewers, so maybe it just didn't go over well in Italy, but I think if you like Ottessa Moshfegh, but sometimes find that her writing is a little bit sparse and you need a little more like literary aspect to writing, you would like this. It deals a lot with like social media and people's curated images online, but I thought it was done pretty well because books about social media can sometimes feel a little bit dated or lazy. I don't know. I enjoyed it. Number 3, book that was overhyped. Okay, I have 2 here. I'm going to make a whole video about this. Other books, but the first I'm going to say is a book that's overhyped in terms of pop culture. Normal People by Sally Rooney. I did not understand the appeal of this book or even of this specific author. I found it quite dull. It was quite dull to read. I just didn't really care about two people's situationship. And then another book that's overhyped, but in terms of like literary status, literary merit, is Universality by Natasha Brown. This was shortlisted for the Booker, which is crazy to me. I read this and I was like, what was the point of that? What was the point of it? I'll go into it later in another video. Number 4, favorite couple of the year. Book couple. Look, I don't read romance, but there were some couples that stood out to me about how you should not live your marriage. And I'm going to say one couple was Run River, Joan Didion, Lily and Everett. A really good exploration and examination of how a marriage breaks down over time, particularly with people's small lies to each other that build up and their betrayal of each other. And then another book that also kind of explores another really memorable married couple to me was The Couple in American Appetites by Joyce Carol Oates, Glynis and Ian. Yeah. Memorable couples that I've read. Book couples. Favorite main character, number 5. I'm going to have to give it to Jania in Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead by Olga Tokarczuk. Sorry. Yeah, who doesn't love an old lady who really cares about the animals? Number 6, book that surprised you. Okay, one is actually Eileen by Ottessa Moshfegh. I am glad I gave her another chance this year because the only book up until this year I had read by her was My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and I did not like it. And so I really liked Eileen. And it is interesting sometimes how authors can put out works that you have totally different reactions to. Another book that I was pleasantly surprised by that I recently finished was You Are the Snake by Juliet Escoria. This is a collection of short stories primarily rooted in girlhood and coming of age. And it is definitely a really great example of female rage, but like legitimate female rage. Young girls and young women who act out violently in physical manners. And it's very gritty, it's very slice of life. But I feel like even though a lot of these stories are vignettes, there still is a narrative. And I felt like she was really able to capture that adolescent rage from a female perspective and the way it can manifest that I haven't really found in other works that I've read. And I guess I did have some nostalgia for this book too, because this is a library copy, by the way. A lot of these stories are rooted in the 90s and the 2000s and even the early 2010s. And so the author's, she's like 6 years older than me, but there was like a weird nostalgia element for me. I don't really know how to say it. There's a lot of heavy stuff that is dealt with in here, but I don't know. I liked it. I'm going to have more of like a more concise review in my December wrap up, actually. Number 7, favorite new author you discovered in 2025. So I discovered quite a few authors I read for the first time. Stephen Graham Jones, Shavisa Woods, Sylvia Aguilera-Zeleny, Aria Aber. Now, of these 4 authors I've listed, they don't really have, except for Stephen Graham Jones, none of the other authors have other fiction books out yet that I can read. Sylvia Aguilera-Zeleny is a Mexican author, and she only has 1 English translation. Aria Aber was a debut novelist. Shavisa Woods, she has only done 1 fiction work. So, but yeah, I did discover some pretty great authors this year. I will be honest with you. Number 8, happiest read of the year. Well, I would have to say, because I don't really read a lot of happy stuff, you will notice if you watch this channel, was actually The Bookshop by Evan Friss. This is a history of the American bookstore. And even if you think that like bookstores are a dying breed, which is kind of implied throughout this, there was something uplifting about it. I don't know if it was just like the resiliency of bookstores and bookstores as a shared space, as part of a community for people, but I found this to be somehow like it was cozy in a weird way. And I normally, like the nonfiction I read, which is why I don't read a lot of nonfiction because the stuff I'm interested in is so heavy. This was not. And so I'm actually really glad that I read it because it was kind of like a nice little palate cleanser. Number 9, most frustrating book you read in 2025. This has been on my mind. I read it this month. Flashlight by Susan Choi. Now, I liked this book overall. I did give it 4 stars, but I was very frustrated by the fact that I felt like she needed an editor. I felt like the heart of the story, the actual events that this novel is loosely based on, we got away from that in this novel. It's over 400 pages, and Susan Choi is a writer. She loves to write. Like, she's a writerly writer, I should say. And so it was just like pages and pages of minute detail and subplots and minor characters that did not at all relate to the heart of this novel. And it could have been a 5-star read, and it wasn't. And that was what was frustrating to me about this novel. Number 10, worst adaptation of the year. The original question was best adaptation. I'm going to change it to worst because I didn't really see, I am not a big like film or series, like TV person. Probably is how I'm able to read so many books. I have to say the worst adaptation I saw this year was Frankenstein by Guillermo del Toro. I know that's an unpopular opinion because yes, the cinematography was gorgeous, but I just felt like this was all style and very little substance. And I did not like how he put his own spin on it by incorporating elements of like The Shape of Water and Beauty and the Beast. I just did not like that. And there was actually a scene in this that is straight up lifted from the 1935 film Bride of Frankenstein, which I actually liked more. I would recommend the 1935. I haven't seen the original 1931 film, but I liked that more than this. I don't know. I just was sort of let down by this. But I guess it's kind of an unpopular opinion. Number 11, the longest book you read this year. Well, according to my Goodreads, it was a reread for me, and that was Margaret Atwood's The Blind Assassin. This was okay. I really didn't remember it because I read it probably in the late 2000s. Quite long, kind of like extraneous detail, but it was fine. It's a decent piece of historical fiction. Number 12, shortest book you read this year. So my Goodreads keeps flipping back and forth between two titles for shortest book. I don't know if it keeps like alternating like editions. I don't know. So one said either Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, which I don't own anymore. I gave it to my mom, which was quite short. It is a novella. And then the other one, I think it says currently, it says Capitalist Realism, Is There No Alternative by Mark Fisher. This felt longer because it's super dense. I felt stupid when I read this. But it's short, but it is not a read you can breeze through. Favorite cover of the year. I have talked about this in previous videos. I'm glad I own this book. I got it just for the cover. And that was The Princess of 72nd Street by Elaine Croft. This is a reissue. It was originally published in 1979. And then two other covers that are runner-ups, I would say actually all three of those are equally my favorites, were Dyscalculia, A Love Story of Epic Miscalculation by Camone Felix. This was a memoir. And also a book I'll go over next month for my December wrap-up, which was Will There Ever Be Another You by Patricia Lockwood. I literally only got this because of the cat and the beautiful colors and also the title. Didn't really care for the book as much, but I'll talk about that in another video. Number 10, a book you haven't stopped thinking about. The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This book, actually, when I read it, I felt like it seeped into my conscious, and I actually had dreams related to this. Definitely one of those books that really stayed with me. I think because it was such a unique premise and also disturbing and heartbreaking. Just highly recommend it. I want to check out more of his stuff. Number 15, cringiest book you read this year. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to say it is Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. I kind of knew I wasn't going to like this. That's why I saved it for last of her works. I just felt like it was a book that had a lot of really heavy themes that weren't really handled well or just sort of mashed together. Yeah, kind of, I just feel like when you're reading it, you're internally cringing the whole time. Number 16, unpopular book you loved. Well, speaking of Melissa Broder, I'm going to have to say, I feel like her stuff is very polarizing. I really liked The Pisces. It's rated, again, it's like 3.33 rated on Goodreads, but I really liked it. So, I don't know, whatever. And then, of course, I did mention the other profile that's also not rated so highly. Number 17, what is the highest and lowest rated books you read this year on Goodreads? Do you agree? So the lowest rated, when I looked at this on my Goodreads, was The Sleepwalkers by Scarlett Thomas, which is rated, I think, 2.98. Yeah, this was pretty bad. I will go into this in my worst, most disappointing books of the year. It was not good. And then the highest rated is a nonfiction. It is Light in Gaza, Writings Born of Fire. I think it's rated 4.68. It's a very necessary book. It is a really timely, important read. It's hard, honestly, to really rate that. I think maybe one of the reasons why it is so highly rated is that, unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people have read it, to be honest with you, because I think it was published by Haymarket Books, so not widely distributed, but it is a very good read. So I am glad to see that it is rated highly. Number 18, favorite quotes of the year. So there were several, but I'm just going to list one because this quote has stayed with me, and I read the book in April, and it was Shahan Cabrana-Talaka's The Seven Moons of Mally Almeida. The quote is as follows. You know why the battle of good versus evil is so one-sided, Malin? Because evil is better organized, better equipped, and better paid. It is not monsters or yakas or demons we should fear. Organized collectives of evildoers who think they are performing the work of the righteous. That is what should make us shudder. Number 19. Book with the most unique concept. I have to hand it to Kate Folk's Sky Daddy. I mean, a book about a woman that is sexually attracted to airplanes and fantasizes about dying in an airplane crash. Yeah, that's pretty absurd. That's pretty unique. Number 20, book that you read that you would reread. I actually asked for this for Christmas because I read it first in the library, and that is Minor Detail by Adania Shibley. Will completely reread this. This is a novella. Probably one of, if not my favorite read of this year, but also highly disturbing. Number 21, reading goal of 2025, or reading goal reflection of 2025 / 2026 reading goals. So my reading goal of 2025, in terms of quantity, I think I said like 55 books I wanted to read. I did surpass that. I am on track to read almost 100, which is crazy to think about. I remember saying I wanted to read more socialist theory, and I did read like Rosa Luxemburg, Mark Fisher, as you've seen. In the video I did last year, I did mention a couple specific titles and authors, and I did read most of those. I didn't get to everyone, particularly nonfiction. Like I said, a lot of the nonfiction I want to read or I'm just interested in is very uncomfortable to read. It's quite bleak, and I feel like I can handle that in fiction a lot better than I can in nonfiction, which is weird. But yeah, I didn't really get as far with my nonfiction this year because at some point it just did start to affect my mental health. Number 22, last question. After 2025 reading, what are you prioritizing in 2026 reading wise? So I would like to read more Native American authors. I just feel like I should. I would like to read more older works. Now, I have kind of an issue with some of the classics. I am currently reading Edith Wharton's The Age of Innocence, which was published in 1920, but I would like to read more stuff that is written like it was published in the 20th century. I'm not really a fan of 19th century stuff. So I would like to read more classics, but classics that are grounded within the previous century that were contemporary writers of that time. And yes, there is some nonfiction I do want to tackle, but I kind of have to be careful just because it can kind of send me into a spiral and give me nightmares. So yeah, that's it. That is my end of year wrap up for 2025. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, let me know how your reading year went, and what you plan on looking forward to in 2026, reading wise. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.